Welcome back to Road to Fire. We're a family of four documenting our journey to FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Let's chat about our plan to save $100,000. I will share details on the 3 pathways to this goal, why we're pursuing a 1-year runway, and our expected return when saving with all real numbers like always, so please hang with me. Today, we have just over $50,000 saved. That is a bit over 6 months in our emergency fund. This is unusual for us. I usually am very lean when it comes to holding cash. If you'd go back 2 years, we'd have about $25,000, and if you went back 4 years, we'll have closer to $10,000 in our emergency fund. This wasn't always by design, but we've never held a lot of cash on hand before. Things changed when our family expanded and the risk per se got higher. The expenses were higher, and the basic needs or our bare-bone budget was much higher. Things were different when it was just my husband and I. The stakes were much lower. If needed be, we could get any type of job to make sure our bills were paid, because, well, our bills were much lower. I wasn't really concerned with needing a fatter emergency fund, but now that's not the case. Outside of the economic changes in the last 4 to 5 years, we just can't shift and change our lifestyle as easily now that we have kids. We become accustomed to our way of living as expected, and that's probably the number one reason why we began fattening up our emergency fund after we paid off our debt. I am one of those savers who hates using their emergency fund. Even if there was an emergency, I would struggle to tap into these accounts. That's because we define emergencies a little different than most people. So what is an emergency fund? Here is a clear and simple definition of an emergency fund by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It is a cash reserve that's specifically set aside for unplanned expenses or financial emergencies. Now, I like this definition. Some people use their after-tax brokerage account as an emergency fund, but I prefer cash. But we don't use our emergency fund to fund most unplanned expenses. For example, if we needed new sets of tires, which we had to do a couple months ago, we would decrease our monthly savings, investing allocations for that month to cover the expense. If we had a broken AC unit or new fridges needed for the rental property, we'll do the same. Essentially, because we have a good amount of disposable income, we only use our emergency fund for expenses over $8,000. But to be honest, I'd rather cut down on all of our expenses before I tap into our emergency fund. I think I still have a bit of a scarcity mindset in me, and I'm working on balancing that out. So why are we saving to $100,000? Well, I'll get into the numbers in a second, but the number one reason we're saving to about $100,000 is to hedge against unemployment. We both are in stable careers, but have you ever lost your job, been laid off, or had your company downsize and your role removed? Has this ever happened to your partner or significant other? Over the last 10 years, we've had this happen to us 3 times, and the fear never goes away. This $100,000 will help alleviate the fear, but to be 100% honest, it's terrifying whenever you lose your job and don't have a strong financial runway. We went on runway, so if or when we run into employment issues, we're situated at least for 1 year. My current job took me 14 months to find. Now, I wasn't unemployed during that time, but the job market is fierce right now. Second reason is quite obvious. We're pushing to save $100,000 to have options. My husband has always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and we've been pushing off his dreams for a very long time. He's been working on his personal business on the side, on and off for some time, and honestly, what he really needs is 6 months of full-time energy to get it going. Now, options doesn't necessarily mean we will leave our job, but it's the choice or freedom to say, well, maybe I don't want to work at X, Y, and Z company anymore. Or maybe I want to take a personal sabbatical for a few months or half a year. Whatever it might be, I just don't want to feel locked or stuck to a job if I don't have to. So here are our numbers. I made an entire budget video which goes through our income and expenses in a typical month, but here are our core monthly expenses, also known as our basic or noodle budget. This is the budget we need to maintain or to live our current existing lifestyle at the basics. I mean, we can always sell our place, rent, or move, but those are not easy options with children. So our biggest expense right now would be childcare at $3,500. Over time, this should go down as my daughter gets older. We then have our primary mortgage at $2,300. I didn't include our rental, as if things got tough, we would sell it off, plus it's fully rented for the next 2 years. Now, tithe would be at about $600, and I know many wouldn't see this as a core expense, but I just can't see myself not giving at all, even if things were tight. It's not quite 10%, but it's definitely something. Grocery sits at about $600 and household at $500. And then we have our utilities for our primary home at about $465 and wrapping up with our gas expenses at about $175 a month. I currently work from home, so this is why this is a bit lower. Our total expenses for our core budget would be just over $8,100. So, to determine how much you need for your emergency fund, you need to do just 4 simple steps. First, you would obviously need to create a budget. Then you need to track your expenses over time to get an average by line item. Then you'll have to identify your core expenses, and this will be different for everyone. And finally, you'll take your monthly expenses or your core monthly expenses and multiply that by the desired months needed. For example, our core monthly expenses are $8,140. We would like to have 12 months saved, so our total needed would be about $98,000. And for simplicity, I rounded this up to $100,000 even. It's really simple to calculate if you have a current budget. But this is all about having a peace of mind. This might not make sense financially, but it's funny because if you go back not too long ago, I'll be in the camp of put all your money in the market to fight against inflation. And it's true, inflation is a silent killer. Not really silent today though, but this decision is more about personal preferences versus the numbers. You know what's crazy though? I could have my checking account go down to $35 or $50 and it doesn't bother me because I know we're working against our zero-based budget. But I can't have our savings go less than $50,000 now. After we hit $50,000, this has now become our baseline. It's almost like something shifted once we reach this number. And I know I struggle with the scarcity mindset. I'm the type of person who will return a purchase because I saw a coupon online that I didn't use, which would have saved me $3. I'm by no means a financial or cash hoarder, but I do struggle with this savings account. A part of me feels like if I'm using the emergency fund, then I failed in my budget or my budget plan failed, but I know it's not true at all. But reaching $100,000 in our emergency account will give me the sense of security I felt after we paid off all of our consumer debt. We did have some debt that had lower interest rates and still paid it off because it felt good to not have to owe anyone outside of our mortgages anything. Sometimes the heart trumps the mind when it comes to finances, at least for us. Okay, so how long will it take us to get there? Now, if we started working on this next month, as March's budget is set and done, I looked at 3 different scenarios for 3 different timelines. So we plan to reach FIRE in 5 years, so we'll need to reach this goal by then. Plan number 1 is 36 months or 3 years, and that would have us saving about $1,400 a month. Plan 2 is 48 months or 4 years, and that would have us saving about $1,000 a month. Keep in mind this is cash saving, not our investing strategy. And then plan 3, which is the slowest, would take us right at 5 years and will need us to save about $834 a month. Honestly, plan number 1 would be hard as we are prioritizing investing this year, so I find plan number 2 to be the most plausible. We can save about $1,000 a month for the next 4 years to keep this going, assuming we don't have any expenses over $8,000 that will set us back. The 4 years also gives us a bit of a buffer in case things change or shift by 2030. I think this plan overall is feasible. But what does that mean in numbers? So if we plug in our numbers, let's start with the $50,000 as our initial deposit or balance today, $1,042 as our monthly contribution for the next 4 years, with a 4.35 APY as we currently bank at Capital One and have their 360 performance savings account. I know this rate might change, but here's an estimate for now. In total, we would have saved $113,715.52, with over $13,000 being interest earned and $50,000 being our direct contribution. I really hope these high-yield savings accounts stay high, but I'm curious, do you count the interest earned on your account as income or do you handle it differently? Let me know down in the comments. So what would it look like if we decided not to save an additional $50,000 but use that money to invest? Well, I plugged in the numbers because I'm always torn between investing and saving, and I'm still torn. So today, if we started from scratch and invested $1,042 a month for the next 4 years with an 8% return, yes, I know there is no way I can know what the future return would be, but 8% feels like a safe bet. Well, let's just use it as a reference. Now, in 4 years, we would have about $59,000 invested. Now, this one chart shows me that getting to the first $100,000 invested is incredibly hard. But secondly, it makes savings seem a bit more appealing. But let's level the playing ground and review the numbers this way. Say we had an initial investment of $50,000. Let's say we invested into one of our current accounts and still contribute the $1,042 a month for the next 4 years with the same interest rate. The total balance would be about $128,000. Now, when I plug these numbers in, I feel like we should ditch this 1-year run rate and skip all the ideas about this emergency fund and double down on investing. I always am going to be struggling with the balance between investing and saving, and I'm not for sure if that's going to go away anytime soon. But despite my hesitations, we will still stick to plan 2 for now. We will still plan to invest $50,000 into the market for this year or within a business, and we will also shoot for having about $1,000 allocated for our emergency fund every month starting in April. Now, I'm laughing inside because I know plans will always change, most times for the better, but I always want to at least have a plan, even if things do change. I think at the end of this year, I'm going to see how we're tracking at FIRE and make a call for next year around investing against savings. I know that saving more cash will essentially slow us down on our FIRE journey, but I don't know by how much. Maybe we are saving too much, but there really isn't a right or wrong way. And I think this year I'll be able to gauge our progress better. With the market being the market, I also don't have control of what's going to happen. I don't want to think about losing my job or my husband losing his, but I don't want to have to tap into our emergency fund, but I do want to have it there. And I'm beginning to realize that with personal finance, there is more money psychology than expected. Our behavior with money is different, which is shown in how we manage our money. But first things first, we made a plan, now it's time to execute it. Now, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. Until next time.